It's 4:06, and you're listening to The Joe Harting Show on 105.1 The Big Talker. Reach Joe at 877-971-1051. And now your host, Joe Harting.
Welcome to Free for All Friday here on 105.1 The Big Talker. More stimulating talk radio. I'm Joe Harting, and joining me live in studio, my co-host. To say that he's a frequent Facebook contributor is really underselling our in-studio co-host today. It's Elisha Dorfsmith, and he is the founder of an organization that's just been exploding in popularity, and it's called Flagstaff Liberty Alliance. And Elisha, we'll talk a little bit about your organization for folks who don't know much about it. But, your name is one that is familiar to a lot of politicians. I mean, I interview a lot of them, and they tell me, usually off mic, they tell me stories about you. And the fact that you've got their attention, I think, speaks volumes about how plugged in you are into Arizona politics and things like that. So interested to talk to you more about your organization, Flagstaff Liberty Alliance, but more importantly, take phone calls today to talk about any issue you want to talk about. It's Free for All Friday. The phone numbers for you to join us are 779-5954 and toll free at 877-971-1051. You can also join us on Facebook. Just do a search for Joe Harting, and that's spelled Harting. If you're not a member, you don't have to be a member. You can still follow the links and things like that, including a link that I have posted up right now, which will give you a live video into the Big Talker studios here in northern Arizona. You can watch us do the show, as well as listen to an audio feed of the show, or you can just tune us in on your FM radio dial on 105.1 FM. Elisha, first of all, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Yeah, and I'm going to lean on you a little bit today because just as I crack the mic, of course, my voice, I can already hear it's going to fail on me. I've been trying to rest it, and it's just, hopefully over the weekend, I apologize for my voice. I really was hoping it would be recovered by now, but and you know what's weird is that I've never had this problem. I've had colds before, but I've never had my voice go out to this extent. It's very frustrating.
It's a bad one going around. I've heard people say that there's a really bad one out there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But with all the stuff that's been going on politically, we've seen an increased number of people not just calling into the show, but also joining on the Facebook group page. And I think my theory is that when things are as heated as they are politically, and when the actions of the politicians in Washington start having a tangible effect on people's lives, in other words, we have people out of work, we have businesses that are suffering. In fact, it looks like $24 billion was just sucked out of the American economy as a result of the 16-day shutdown by our esteemed leaders in Washington, D.C. So those are real tangible effects that really affects people's lives. And when government affects people's lives, people suddenly become interested in the government. And I think that's why a lot of people have been joining us on the Facebook page, just because we are a local political talk radio program, and it's a place to get plugged in. Let people know that what's happening in Washington is having a real effect on us. Now, for a guy like you who watches the American political landscape as closely as you do, you could probably point to a number of areas where politics is intervening in people's lives, both at the very local level here in Flagstaff and also at the national level. Let's start a conversation about Flagstaff Liberty Alliance. What is the purpose of that organization?
Well, Flagstaff Liberty Alliance was, I originally came up with the idea and started to kind of bring liberty-minded people together and other organizations. It was going to be a very small effort at the time to get people to talk, to network, and those types of things. But as it grew, we decided we needed a mission statement. We started putting all of this stuff together. The focus was on constitutional issues, civil rights, just basically rights and freedoms. And Over the last year, we've organized as a 501c4, so we're officially a nonprofit. The state recognizes us. We're still waiting approval from the feds, and we'll see how that goes.
The IRS, the Internal Revenue, well, I think they're a little backed up right now.
Right. Well, and, hopefully, with all the publicity and stuff they got, they don't cause us any trouble.
Yeah, and you're referring to the scandals. You and I were talking right before the start of the show about 501c4s, and those are the organizations that were in the crosshairs of this IRS scandal. A lot of organizations that had buzzwords, keywords, raised flags, and were subject to additional scrutiny by the IRS. Now, I happen to think in a lot of cases that was justifiable scrutiny. However, there is some of that, and one of the investigations that are going on is, well, was that politically motivated? Was it one-sided? Was the executive branch trying to use the IRS as a weapon to go after its political enemies? And certainly ideas like that are not unheard of. Go look at the Nixon administration. They certainly abused a lot of their authority and agencies to go after political rivals. But anyways, you're a 501c4. And you're trying to pull together like-minded, liberty-minded people. One of your big inspirations, if I can go out on a limb, is Ron Paul.
Sure, absolutely. I worked on Ron Paul's campaign in 2007, then again in 2012. So spent quite a few hours knocking on doors, waving signs. Had my first run-in with the local media in 2007 when they Flagstaff Live, I believe, had a front page article about us called "The Dangerous Desperation of the Moonbats," and it was very interesting because you could see that they were trying to spark a chord out there, and it was a very negative article about us, basically saying we were crazy. But it really made us start realizing that there's people on the left and the right who are threatened by people who are not within the certain box that they should be put into. And we were thinking outside the box. We were conservative on some issues, liberal on others. You couldn't quite put your finger on where we were coming from, but we like to say we were constitutionalists.
Mm-hmm.
You like the Constitution, it speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. Freedom and liberty.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm the same way now. I've been very critical of Republicans, and people think, oh no, you can't criticize Paul Gosar, you can't criticize politician A, B, or C, or that makes you liberal, or you can't defend Obama, or that makes you liberal. Right. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I got to say that with the government shutdown, I've been watching this debacle unfold with the healthcare website, and when I heard the price tag, it really just blows my mind how incredibly incompetent some people are in Washington, D.C., and it really lends credence to the idea that people in Washington cannot do anything right. $650, that's over $500 million spent to unroll a website, and under intense scrutiny, with people just waiting to pounce. It's partisanship, okay? Right. And whether the health care law is good, bad, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a Democrat idea, so Republicans are going to oppose it. And right. They're waiting for anything to pounce on. And so what do? They have a disaster with their website. I mean, it's an unmitigated disaster, and it's a $500 million disaster. Right. And listen, I know you're a guy who believes in free market solutions and things like that. I was saying to my coworkers, right, and I run an IT department at NAU. I said, if they would have given me half that money, and some of the people that I work with, we could have put a website up, and we could have registered people right. in this healthcare system, certainly for that amount of money, and had plenty of money left over.
When you get bureaucrats in charge of something, you tend to get that kind of result. That it's not about efficiency and getting things done smoothly. And you run into that at all levels of government.
Yeah, and having said that, I still support the Affordable Care Act. I'm sure you're against it. I'm sure you do not support government provided or government mandated health care.
Well, yeah,
you're a freedom guy.
Well, it's not a freedom issue. I mean, there's definitely things that need to be done, that can be done. And I'm not an expert in that area, but I don't like where people are forced to buy a product. The insurance companies, the drug companies were very big in lobbying for it. And, you know, it's been hashed into the ground by, you know, talk radio and any the Republicans, Democrats. It's been argued to the as far as it can go. But, you know, at the end of the day, is it really going to work? Is it really the right solution? And I personally don't think it is.
Yeah, and I can understand. And, you know, it still remains to be seen. It hasn't unrolled. Now, certain aspects of it went into effect. Other aspects of it are starting now to take hold, which is, of course, the individual mandate portion of the Affordable Care Act. And we're going to find out. What does that mean? What does it cost people more money? Is it saving people money? Are more people going to be covered? Are we going to see a shortage of doctors and health care? All that remains to be seen. I wish that instead of it just being blind, dumb, partisan politics in Washington, that Republicans and Democrats could come together in a good faith effort, recognizing that it is a law, that it has been affirmed by the Supreme Court, and just do what they can to make it better. Take some of the Republican ideas and allow the free market to compete across state lines.
Right.
You know, do some tort reform. You know, those are Republican ideas. Great. Introduce those into the bill, negotiate, make the bill better, figure out ways to make sure that this actually is a benefit to the American people and not the huge debacle that the Republican Party just is dying for it to be. They want it to be that so bad because they'd rather be right and they'd rather score political points than try and do something that is to the benefit of the country.
Sure. And, you know, both sides will do that. I mean,
true.
You know, when Bush was president, there was the massive outcry against the wars, and I mean, you saw that. It's pretty incredible. Some of the, you know, thousands upon thousands of people showing up to protest, and then, you know, when Obama was elected, you saw the anti-war movement disappeared. They're finally starting to come back. We held a no war with Syria protest in front of City Hall recently.
Saw that, yeah.
And
so there's the moon bats.
Back.
Yeah, Elisha and the moon bats with their signs.
But the incredible thing about that, no, honestly, we brought in progressive Democrats showed up. We had a lot of groups, some Tea Party people. It's like, this is pretty incredible. Here's an issue where people of all sides can come together and we agree. And just about every car that drove by honked. And I think the people flooding Congress, I think the war with Syria was really, Congress got scared and they pulled back.
They did.
And it's interesting, too, how at that time, it was a couple months ago, there was money to go to war with Syria.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we don't have money to even keep the Grand Canyon open. So, you know, politics, it's very interesting to follow and to see just the hypocrisy and just kind of the games that are played.
Yeah, and I you know, I totally and completely agree with you. I want to ask you a couple of questions because you've been involved in local politics here in Flagstaff, and you've been very concerned about food. And
Absolutely.
I want to ask you about the food ordinance, and I also want to ask you about what you perceive to be the biggest threats to liberty in this country, since Flagstaff Liberty Alliance is all about individual liberty, sure, and freedom and things of that nature. And I want to get your perspective on what you think are the biggest threats to that. We'll also ask your thoughts on it. You're welcome to join us here, 779-5954, and toll free at 877-971-1051. Elisha Dorfsmith, founder of the Flagstaff Liberty Alliance, co-host today on Free for All Friday on 1051, The Big Talker, more stimulating talk.
Hi, this is Jan.
Hi, Jan. I'd like to schedule a test drive for my husband.
Great. Which car?
Camry.
Camry is one of our most popular models.
Well, he's crazy about it.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Ever since our neighbors got a Camry, he's been obsessed.
It is an easy car to fall in love with.
Yeah, but he's been watering the same plant in our front yard for hours just so we can stare at it. I think he's scaring the neighbors. I know he's freaking me out.
We better get him in for a test drive ASAP.
Experience the legendary Camry at your local Toyota dealer. Quiet, comfortable interior, available leather-trimmed seats, and ultra-smooth ride. Book a test drive and discover what you've been missing. To learn more, visit your dealer today. Toyota, let's go places.
Visit Finley Toyota Flagstaff, conveniently located behind Flagstaff Hall. Log on to toyota.com. Toyota.
Mr. Know-It-All, can you help me? I need my heater winterized. Can you do that?
Yes, Mr. Know-It-All can help you with all your repairs, cleaning, and winterizing. We also service dryers, washers, refrigerators, freezers, water heaters, jacuzzis, saunas, pools, dishwashers, garbage disposals, and Mr. Know-It-All also repairs TVs, all makes and models. Mr. Know-It-All is the only home and business expert of its kind in northern Arizona.
Mr. Know-It-All, what's your number?
Well, you can get a hold of me at 928-266-6410. That's 928-266-6410.
Mr. Know-It-All. He knows it all.
Hi, it's Joe Harting here with Jesse Singh from Green Rhino Builders. Jesse, your team's here in northern Arizona to get the word out that after the historic active monsoon, and especially with the hailstorms we saw here, there's a lot of roofs that may have sustained some damage.
That's right, Joe. Even new roofs can get damaged by the weather, especially by hail. So if you give us a call at 480-966-3522 or 800-835-ROOF, or visit our website at greenrhinobuilders.com, you can schedule a free, no-obligation inspection by one of our qualified team members.
You know, you guys uncovered substantial hail damage on my roof, and we just had it replaced a little over a year ago. Before I did business, I had to check you guys out, and I learned that your reputation and your integrity is absolutely impeccable. That's why I asked you not only to fix my roof, but to be a sponsor on my show.
You're right, Joe. Our reputation is very important to us. We're not going to tell you that you have damage to your roof just to have your insurance adjuster come out and tell you that there is no damage. It's because of our relationship with these insurance companies that we're able to come out and do the work for very little or no cost to you out of pocket, and that's why we're also A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, impeccable record with the Register of Contractors, and we're a preferred installer for one of the largest shingle manufacturers in the country.
Call Green Rhino Builders. I did. 480-966-3522 or call 1-800-835-ROOF or visit them online at greenrhinobuilders.com.
105.1 The Big Talker. Now back to the Joe Harting Show.
Well, once again, those numbers are 779-5954 and toll free at 877-971-1051. Elisha Dorfsmith, co-host of this Free for All Friday. Elisha, great to have you here. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Joe. I do appreciate you inviting me on and begging me to be here, actually.
I have. I got to tell you, I've been after you for a long time. When I bring politicians in here, and you sometimes will put some really great questions. You'll pass them along on the Facebook page, and I'll turn around and pose them, and you see people get really annoyed. Or you see people get really intrigued, or, oh yeah, Elisha, that must be Elisha, and they all know who you are. It's because you've been very active in Arizona politics at a variety of different levels. As a guy who's worked on Ron Paul's campaigns, and as an activist right here in the city of Flagstaff, trying to take up issues important to the city. And so I want to work our way out with a couple of local issues and get your thoughts on them. Maybe almost like a lightning round, but sure. Let's dive in with a little bit of depth on the first one, which was the food ordinance. Now, tell us a little bit, give us a little bit of background on the food issue that the city council ultimately ended up rejecting.
About a year ago, a lot of news stories really hit the media from around the country, where cities, towns, through zoning laws and ordinances, were making gardens illegal. And so one of the things that we were saying was one person was arrested, faced 93 days in jail for growing
now, where was that?
vegetables. This was
in New Jersey or something?
I think that was in this was Florida,
Tennessee,
Michigan. We had
something.
Stuff happening all over, even Iowa.
Now, are you just cherry picking just the most extreme examples of where people have taken the things too far, or is that really indicative of people getting vilified for having gardens? I know in one case it was a city ordinance. You couldn't have the garden in the front yard, and somebody had it in the front yard. They were in violation of some sort of city ordinance, and I think that the backlash from the fines or the arrest that was involved with that actually caused that city to kind of reverse course.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of times with public backlash, ordinances have been overturned. And different zoning laws have been changed, but the threat is real. It is out there, and people have been fined. And so we started seeing like an increase of this about a year ago. And our group, we were meeting on a monthly basis then, and we started trying to come up with some solutions. And we saw that some other towns and counties had passed these resolutions, and they were very effective. Actually, we were looking at an ordinance originally, and that became too big of a thing with the legality of it, double
now,
checking.
you were trying to create an ordinance?
We wanted to actually write an ordinance that would change some of the restrictions that are out there. I mean, right now, Flagstaff, if you want to raise chickens, you have to have them 50 feet away from a structure, and that could include a shed. So a lot of people are doing it illegally. You know, they're on a 50 by 100 lot, you don't have that 50 feet away from a structure. And so, you know, there was hopes that we could, you know, make some minor changes and just allow a little bit more. The ordinance, though, ultimately we decided against it, and we decided a statement by the council supporting basically the rights of people in groups to grow their own food for themselves and their families. This had nothing to do with sale, nothing to do with restaurants. It was
so you wanted a
growing.
simple statement from the council saying that it's okay to raise and to grow your own food,
right,
and eat it or sell it to your neighbors or to the local restaurants.
Right. You know, actually, we even took out anything that had to do with sale because it was an iffy issue. People, if you want to sell your vegetables, they want the FDA there to inspect it. And so we addressed concerns that we got from around the community. We collected about 400 signatures around. We were at First Friday Art Walk. We collected signatures at Flagstaff Pride. We were everywhere.
Anywhere there was a crowd, you guys
right,
were there collecting signatures.
And people across the political spectrum really embraced it. I mean, we had, you know, people, leaders in the Republican Party, leaders in the Democratic Party. Flagstaff Sustainability Commission unanimously endorsed it. Zoning code was like, they wrote up some very positive recommendations with the resolution when it was presented to council. And so, you know, we had endorsements from other groups, and one of those endorsements was withdrawn after the water kind of got muddied, and the rumor started going around town that this resolution would abolish all food safety laws, and then people got scared. And I mean, you know, small town, bad rumor, and it really was an effective rumor. I don't know who started it. I have suspicions, but you know, it can really poison the water for something like that. And we found we only had 3 council members to support it. So yeah, Orovitz, Brewster, and Neighbors. Yeah, we were one short.
Wow, those 3 sound familiar. Those were the 3 that were in support of the Flagstaff Shelter Services getting funding from the Emergency Housing Fund that the Flagstaff City Council had to make a decision about, which ultimately those 3 said yes, the rest of the council said no. But right now, I will say, and let me give a plug out there for Jeff Orovitz and for some really great people in our community, including some people who are also members of this Facebook group page. Thank you for, you know, helping out. It's awesome to see the community step up and fill in the gap. Elisha, I suppose from your perspective, ideally that's the way things would work. Instead of us relying on government to fund things and to tax and decide which way to disperse money, neighbors helping neighbors is the way to go.
Well, sure, and you know, that really is what seems to be effective. I mean, if you look at what happened, I watched the council meeting and I couldn't believe what I was saying. I streamed it online, and there was just so much opposition to giving $5,000 from a $20,000 fund set aside specifically for emergency housing.
And I didn't get to watch it. Do you have any insight? What was the reasoning for the other 4 council members to reject this?
You know, I was bewildered as I sat there watching. You know, like the head of the shelter services, a couple council members. Yeah, a couple council members seemed to really almost be yelling at her, and it's like this is for the homeless. You know, this isn't somebody going selfishly asking for help. This is an issue, and it really is. You know, if you have to close in January, it's a matter of life and death. And you know, I hate to say it, but it's not a fear or scare tactic to say that. It's the absolute truth.
It is.
And so it was very confusing to see where the council members were coming from who opposed it so much. I could see them say, well, on principle, I can't support it, but they were very. A couple were very much against it. And so, you know, I watched that. I was very encouraged the next day to wake up and see this money being raised. You know, the $13,000, $14,000. more than council was going to give, I believe, $5,000. So to see this money being raised, to see people coming together, and it made me think, you know, government can fail us at times. You look at Grand Canyon being closed again. Government failed.
Well, and that, you know, when you said a matter of life and death, immediately I thought of the government shutdown.
Sure.
and how many people, when you're dealing with clinical trials of cancer drugs, time is life. It's not money. It's life and death. And to delay and to play games with people's lives, I think, is just unconscionable. And that's what happened. It was a complete and total failure of the government. And again, my disgust goes out to those 80 members of the Republican Party in the United States House of Representatives. Look, you know, I was thinking about this as I pivot here a little bit about when would that be okay for people to make such an awesome stand like that to shut things down? And I thought it would have been nice to see that kind of passion from the likes of Paul Gosar and others on, say, the Patriot Act or NDAA or their effort earlier to try and defund the NSA's efforts. I mean, here we have our Fourth Amendment trampled on.
Oh, yeah. And
I see people getting up in arms over sugary drinks in New York City and, you know, other frivolous, silly, stupid things that they put up on a pedestal. But when it comes to our liberties being trampled, why isn't Rush and Sean and Glenn and everyone else jumping up and down and screaming and lighting their hair on fire for this reason?
Right. You know,
this is really scary stuff.
Sure, it is. And, you know, a few of those guys have made, you know, reference to it, but they haven't been going after it the way they should have. And that is a key issue. I mean, we're talking
why do you suppose that is?
Liberty. Well, a lot of these guys, look, they supported the Patriot Act at the time it was passed. It was, I mean, your library book records being public record, or you know, the whole going after people
because the guy who was in office was a Republican, and they weren't going to attack a Republican president.
Sure.
And then even after the fact, that they're not going to backtrack and say, you know, I supported it at the time, but that was bad, and I didn't realize, or whatever. Instead they're just. I just don't understand. It's tyrannical, and it was when it was introduced under Bush, and it continues to be under Obama.
Before MMA exploded in
excuse
popularity,
me.
the Circle of Eight system trained its warriors in
I wish
the
I knew how to
best and
stop
most
this.
effective martial arts: Muay Thai, boxing, Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido, Taekwondo, and the Chinese arts of Hungar and Bagua. Mastering and combining these arts for 50 generations, Circle of Eight created the most potent, effective, and complete combat system. Long before it was a sport, the Circle of Eight was true MMA. And the only place in northern Arizona to get this elite training is 8 Dragons Muay Thai in West Flagstaff in the University Safeway Shopping Center, or in East Flagstaff at Octagon Sunnyside Boxing on East Cedar Avenue across the street from the Cedar Safeway. Whether you want real-life skills to defend yourself or elite training to compete at the highest level of the sport, the Circle of Eight stands out from the rest. Learn more at 8dragons.us. That's the number 8dragons.us, or call 928-266-1600. Knuckle up with the 8 Dragons Muay Thai and Octagon Sunnyside Boxing.
All right, welcome back. 8 Dragons and Muay Thai. It's great stuff, by the way, if you ever get a chance to stop by. I apologize for that, for rudely interrupting myself. It's live radio, and Elisha Dorfsmith with Flagstaff Liberty Alliance is joining me in studio, helping me co-host Free for All Friday. The numbers are 779-5954 and toll-free at 877-971-1051. Let's back up for just a second. We were talking about the food ordinance, and a question coming in on the Facebook page says this: I'm sorry, but how do we know people aren't using chemicals? Just because it's homegrown doesn't mean it's safe. Will the people selling it also take on the responsibility if someone gets sick?
That's an interesting question. And again, I would reiterate that the resolution that we were putting forward was for people growing food for themselves and their families. And it said that throughout the resolution. So this was never about selling or even giving food away. This was about people being allowed to grow it on their own property for themselves and their families, and that was really what we were trying to address. And just if an issue came up, say a zoning change or a ordinance that would impact that, we could say, well, the city has this resolution. It's non-binding, but think about it. You have supported food in the past. Let's not step on it now.
What about GMOs, genetically modified foods, labeling those? That is an issue that will be presented, I suspect, to Arizona voters.
It's coming very soon. Signature collecting is being started.
And do you agree? I know you're not a fan of Monsanto,
I'm not
and I'm not either. One of the most evil corporations in the world. But
right, when it comes to GMOs, there may be a place for it. I mean, it yields a bigger crop. It can feed starving people. But I personally would rather not eat GMOs. I would like to know what I'm eating. I'm not 100%, sure I want to ban something. I don't like to ban things.
So label
give people that option.
Let people make decisions, and key in letting them make decisions is making sure they have the information so that they can decide whether or not they want to buy something from the store that was created with genetically modified food. If you are raising chickens or eggs, if I buy a dozen eggs off you and I get sick, is it too bad for me? Can I sue you?
Sure, you have recourse. You could sue me. The thing is, you know where you got them. If you buy them from the grocery store, you don't necessarily know where they can track it, but it takes quite a while.
Sure.
You can tell, if you're buying eggs from your neighbor, if your neighbor's at least keeping it, the chicken coop clean, or if it's, being, pumped up with antibiotics and all this other stuff that is just really poisoning chickens, and then it's affecting people who eat them because the antibiotics are
the steroids
going through it, and the steroids.
Yeah, they pump the chickens full of steroids now, so that they can increase the size of their breasts. I'm not kidding. And then they see early signs of puberty in kids,
and they wonder why.
And yeah, it's true. And some of the other side effects of the chemicals are bad too. But when you read about the salmonella outbreaks from spinach, or bad salmonella outbreak, and the Centers for Disease Control was conveniently shut down, thanks Dr. Gosar, and people got sick. There was a recall, and I'm sure that the people who got sick have some sort of recourse and can be compensated. If you allow people on the local level to buy and sell with each other, and there's no formalized inspection process, is there any guarantee of safety? And if there is something, intentional or not, can Elisha Dorfsmith and his farm handle the medical bills for the dozens of people that could be gotten sick?
Yeah, and again, I want to make sure that it's very clear that the resolution was not about selling or giving away or trading food. It was for people growing it or raising it for themselves and their families. And
I've always done that.
Right, and
my dad grows tomatoes. And I go over there and I get a bag of tomatoes from my dad. So is that illegal? Are we breaking the law somehow, potentially?
No, well, not necessarily. The Food Safety Modernization Act may change that. It was Monsanto, Kraft, a bunch of giant food corporations really lobbied to get that through, and the goal there was, let's eliminate the competition through regulation. And then they wrote themselves exemptions. So you may have heard of the Monsanto Protection Act, that you can't sue us, and
that was slipped into an appropriations bill.
It was an appropriations bill. And so when you got this kind of stuff going on, and you see the corporations like that are involved with the politicians, that cronyism is there. That's just something that needs to be called out and stopped.
I was going to ask you about another topic, but I'm going to let Rob do it, who's calling in online too. Rob, thanks for your patience. Go ahead and throw your question out there.
Yeah, Joe, I don't get to listen all the time, but I wanted to know if you had read the circular that was sent regarding the community college tax increase.
The circular, the one that the community college sent out themselves?
Yeah, the white paper. It's like a white folder.
Yeah, you can actually download that right on the Coconino. If you go to coconino.edu, they've got to download the kind of cheat sheet about the reasons why you want to consider voting one way or the other on the proposed
correct, right.
override bill.
I just had a couple comments. One, I laughed when I read their mission statement. It was like, we want to, educate through diversity or something, some new age thing. And personally, I felt like if they said we want to teach people stuff, would have been better. But the big question I have is they're saying that they're extremely successful in teaching and their enrollment's booming. The kids are paying for more, or are paying much higher percentage or a significant more amount of money more than they ever anticipated for tuition, and yet, despite being so successful, they want more money. What's going to happen when enrollment goes down? Are they going to come screaming for money? I think they're so successful that they need more money. It doesn't make sense to me.
That did seem like an interesting point that was made, and I had heard someone say that even if the override passes, tuition could still go up again, and so it seemed like another interesting point that either way, tuition is going to be going up.
And they're not. It doesn't appear to me as a taxpayer that they've done nothing to try to trim costs.
Right.
Yeah, and I saw your post on Facebook, and I was actually starting to write when my thing froze up, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to wait until talk about this on the radio. Here's the thing. You have a growing population, and the purpose of a community college is to provide higher education that is accessible for lower income people who may not be able to get into college, or people who perhaps didn't have the grades or the performance in high school. It gives them a chance to it's a remedial step back up into a university. It also provides training for people who are professionals instead of having to pay those gigantic fees to go to an in-state university. So I don't think the two things that you suggested were, let's make it more difficult to get into CCC, like in other words, raise the standard. I think that goes contrary to what you have community colleges for, or raise the tuition where, they've already got the highest tuition of any community college in the state. They've also got the lowest amount of tax revenue to support them of any other community college in the state. Remember what Mr. Talboom said yesterday when he was in here. It would take 3 times the amount of revenue from property taxes that they currently get for them to equal the lowest funded community college in the state. So it's 1/3 of the lowest funded community college in the state, and it is higher tuition. So they have already shifted a massive amount of the burden onto the students to the point where it's making the education inaccessible. Now, the second point is the state funding, and this is where the real issue is in my mind, because the state of Arizona has had a structural deficit for a long time. Economic downturn, and you could argue poor planning by previous administrations and previous legislatures led us down this path where when the economic downturn happened, the state of Arizona was not prepared for it, and they had to slash and cut, and they had to make very difficult choices. Well, now that the budget is back in order, they haven't returned any of the funding to education. They haven't brought back health care levels back to where they were the voters had asked that they should be. In fact, now that Obamacare is taking place, that's almost a moot point. But that's why I'm supporting this. Now, some folks brought up some good points. They're valid points. Like, what about this other money that the county has over here in this surplus? Why can't they just use that? I wish they could, but they can't. They're shackled. When you bring revenue in, say for the BBB tax as an example here in the city of Flagstaff, you can only use that for beautification. You can only use it for this or that, and that's to prevent corruption, and it's to prevent abuse, and it's to prevent politicians from having too much discretion over where money is shifted, because that lends itself to corruption. So that's my justification for why I think we ought to pass this. Elisha, I know in the past you've been adamantly opposed to anything that raises taxes on anybody, and this would certainly raise taxes on property.
Sure. Property tax is just one of those issues that I have a problem with in general. Imagine you work your whole life, you pay off your house, and you miss paying your property taxes, and the government comes in and takes it. Do you really own your property? Do you have those property rights? And so it's a question that's always been in my mind. In the past, as far as education issues, I've taken a big stand against. I was actually the chairman for a political action committee opposed to an override at one time, and
I remember.
Oh yeah, and which is how I got to meet Rick Krug, who was the chairman for the one for it. So it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taken a backseat to these kinds of issues. People get emotions in there. I've learned to kind of choose my battles. I can tell you that
you are learning a lot in your 3 years.
I have not voted yet. I'm going to vote early, but I can tell you how I will be voting, and
You want to share?
It'll be no.
It'll be no. And I'm voting yes. And Rob, I suspect you're voting no.
Correct. I will vote no, only because I don't know what they've done to show what they can do to try to cut their costs. And
they did.
A secondary question is, does the NAV? I mean, they have. I know they have an outreach, and we have a huge county, and it's very difficult to give access to everybody. But does Navajo Nation provide the community college any funding to be in their and to be on the nation?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. It's actually a fairly good question. I mean, they certainly have a government, and their government has discretionary funds. Do they fund in Coconino Community? Is that a funding source for the college? I don't know. That's actually a great question, Rob. As far as cutting costs, you haven't seen anything. Well, yesterday, Mr. Talboom again pointed out how they cut $4.3 million out of their $17 million budget because before they went to the voters and asked for this a few years ago, they have gone through and they have cut and cut and cut. They went to every single department and they said, give us as many ideas as you can to where we can implement cost-saving measures. And they brought it in and they implemented that to 20% of their budget. I think if there is ever an organization that has stretched the dollar further, that has been good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, that has provided the most value in return for those taxpayer dollars, it's Coconino Community College. And I will also say on their behalf that the investment into the community is tremendous. And I use myself as an example. Now, I went back to school to get a secondary degree. To go back to NAU would have been cost prohibitive to me. I couldn't have done it. I had a family, and I needed to make better money. So instead of staying in radio, which is what I was doing at the time, and not earning enough and having to get food stamps or some other subsidy, I decided to do everything in my power to make sure I never had to rely on government assistance. And so I found Coconino Community College, and I went back to school. And a lot of people do that. Studies show that a better educated society is a society that has less crime. So the savings to us on the tax level are tremendous. And when you have better communities, you have better property values. So I think that it's a no-brainer to me. If you're a property owner, you ought to be embracing this. It is one of the greatest ways that you can help ensure that your property values are well intact.
It can't be. You can't raise taxes and improve property values.
Absolutely, you can.
No way. Your tax, the more the property is worth, and the higher the taxes are on it, the less it's going to sell for because the higher the cost of maintaining that property. You cannot. It does not improve the values.
Tell that to the entire state of California.
It's going to maintain to keep the values down.
Yeah, Rob, I'm up against the break, and
okay.
Hey,
thank you. Great
phone call. And Rob, you're coming in here and co-hosting with me one of these days soon, I hope, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, come on. Yeah, he's got a lot of great thoughts and ideas on things. But anyways, that's my spiel, and we're kind of past due on the break. Elisha, sit tight. We're going to take a break and more of your phone calls. Free for all Friday, 779-5954, and toll free at 877-971-1051. This is 1051, the Big Talker. More stimulating talk.
The second annual Alpine Harvest Festival returns to Williams every weekend in October. Each Saturday and Sunday is filled with fun activities the whole family can enjoy. Ride through the Arizona Drive-Thru Wildlife Park on the open-air Howell-Oween Express bus. Discover the secret pumpkin patch on the Grand Canyon Railway's Pumpkin Patch Train and take home your very own pumpkin. Advance reservations available at thetrain.com. Don't forget to dress up in costume for more Halloween fun. The Alpine Harvest Festival every weekend through October. For more information, visit alpineharvestfestival.com.
Bacon wrapped lamb, achiote brisket, and shrimp scampi, certified Angus burgers, steaks and seafood, salads, vegetarian and gluten-free options. Settle in and soak up 1899 Bar and Grill. We've taken an American bistro and a contemporary steakhouse and brought them together in the historic North Union at NAU. Parking is easy, right in front of the restaurant on DuPont or across the street at the High Country Conference Center. Relax in the comfortable shade of the 1899 Bar and Grill patio or enjoy the fire pit at night. We'll present regional beers on tap and a complete wine list. Enjoy live music Thursday and Sunday nights, appetizers and happy hour Monday through Thursday from 4 till 6. Come in for lunch or make your dinner reservation by calling 523-1899 or visit 1899barandgrill.com. 1899 Bar and Grill. Quite literally, nothing else like it in northern Arizona. 307 West DuPont on the edge of the NAU campus beside the Drury Inn.
Leroy and Elisa Sykes are real Flagstaff homeowners. Here's what they had to say about their experience with Green Rhino Builders.
Green Rhino took care of everything. They coordinated with our insurance company, the insurance adjuster, and many manufacturers to rapidly install top-of-the-line products. Having to deal with the aftermath of any kind of weather damage can be complicated and intimidating, but Green Rhino removed all obstacles for us and quickly got our home back to better than new. Hiring the professionals at Green Rhino to replace our roof and repair our storm damage was truly one of the best decisions we could have made.
Green Rhino Builders is in the Flagstaff area, helping residents work with their insurance companies to identify and repair roofs with little to no out-of-pocket cost. To schedule a free, no-obligation inspection of your roof, call 1-800-835-ROOF. That's 1-800-835-7663. Or visit greenrhinobuilders.com.
105.1 The Big Talker. Now, back to the Joe Harting Show.
And Elisha Dorfsmith, Flagstaff Liberty Alliance. The numbers are 779-5954 and toll free at 877-971-1051. Elisha, do you think there's a conflict of interest in a city council member who is affiliated with United Way demanding that Flagstaff Shelter Services be evaluated by that organization before they get city dollars?
That is a good question, and this is something that has come up on my blog, something that did spark one of those emotional reactions, because I had a little criticism for United Way and a couple particular council members, and I saw what I did see was a conflict of interest when a council member was able to vote to to give more money to an organization that comes back to their organization where they sit on the board and receive a salary. It sounds like a conflict. And so this particular council member has recused herself from a few votes because of that. So it was put out there, but there's still a conflict I see, and even ultimately voting on the budget when that money is coming back to them. It's just the way I see it.
And I would like to know a little bit more. They asked both of us. I don't have an immediate answer. I do know Flagstaff Shelter Services, though. If we're talking about them being evaluated by United Way, well, I know United Way that received its funding from the city of Flagstaff disseminated money out to Flagstaff Shelter Services, so they must have already passed the test to receive funding from the United Way. So I'm not real sure. I'd have to, I want to know a little bit more before I, pass judgment one way or the other on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was sustainable development in Flagstaff. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, that's a good question. Here's something a lot of people don't know about me, is that I actually serve on the Flagstaff Sustainability Commission. So I am a member of that 7-member panel, and I focus on a lot of sustainable things. Now, food is my issue. That's one of the reasons I got involved. But when it comes to being sustainable, I don't like force. I don't like government forcing certain things, but I like promoting. I like fostering. I was happy to go and start put a rain harvesting system on my house. I like to lead by example. So
it's a good idea for individuals. You just don't like ordinances that are requiring harvesting of rainwater.
Right. If you're forcing it, and you have the different problem in states, Colorado for a while, where it was banned. You couldn't harvest rainwater, and you could get in trouble for collecting it. So there's extremes either way. And
you're right. I'm beating my head up against the wall. Let me ask you, Flag Liberty Alliance. I think it's been a little confusing to a lot of people, and I think with Ron Paul and his rise to prominence, it has really awakened within the Republican Party a conservative movement. And I'm sure you will agree with me in saying that the Republican establishment did not like Ron Paul. He got railroaded in previous elections. He got excluded from debates despite the fact that he overwhelmingly won previous debates. He was the only candidate in that election cycle who distinguished himself from the cast of characters on that stage. As a result, we've seen the Tea Party movement Now, I don't know if we want to say Rand Paul is the founder, but I would hasten to say he had no influence in it. We see the Ayn Rand folks also kind of their own little branch of libertarianism, and then you have the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. Where does Flag Liberty Alliance? Are you guys Tea Party people? Are you Ayn Rand folks? Are you no government? Is any regulation good in your view?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Flagstaff Liberty Alliance is a nonpartisan organization, so we have people across the political spectrum: Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents, and some people who just refuse to vote. They're like, I'm done with it. I'm not going to get into politics. You know, I want to make a difference in other ways. So we have a pretty diverse group. You know, the philosophy of liberty, basically. You know, that don't step on somebody else's rights, and but you know, don't violate someone's rights, but don't allow them to violate yours. So, I would say the group generally leans constitutionalist, libertarian, but it can be very progressive too. I mean, we've worked on a whole variety of issues that people might see as left leaning, as you know, anti-war, as whatever. So maximum freedom and liberty, but you know, a common sense approach to it all is kind of where we're coming from.
What do you think about Social Security? Bad program, entitlements in general, a bad idea?
Well, you know, personally, I don't like to speak for Flagstaff Liberty Alliance, and that's been an issue. As a lot of things I say on my blog, people think it's the group speaking, and it really, my views are my own. But you know, Social Security, I see it as an unsustainable program. I'm concerned at where it's heading. We've got, you know, baby boomers retiring, you know, at an increasing number, and we don't see people going into the workforce. We see high unemployment still. This is a big problem that we're going to be facing.
How about Wall Street regulation? I am very concerned that we haven't really done anything to address what happened last time with the subprime mortgage disaster.
Right.
And we are between the Federal Reserve and between the antics in the market. I don't understand how we are breaking new records in the stock market with unemployment still around 7%. It scares me. It makes me think that there is another crisis brewing, that it's a house of cards. And I blame things like the repeal of Glass-Steagall, for example. There's a lot of unregulation going on, unlike our neighbors to the north in Canada, where they've had no crashes really to speak of, not even during our Great Depression. You know, they've had minor bumps, but nothing like what we've had here. I think regulation is incredibly important, and I don't think there's enough of it in Wall Street. What would you say to that?
It depends on what kind of regulation. I mean, if you're regulating saying people can't make money through an honest way, then there shouldn't be that. But if it comes down to, you know, some of the special backroom deals you see, some of the cronyism is what I call it, where, you know, you're picking winners and losers, saying we're going to work with this company and not that company, and special favors. I mean, that should be illegal. It's not a fair, honest approach.
Yeah, well, I think that there's so much going on, and so some of it is so complex. Computers executing trades in fractions of a second, artificially inflating the value of stocks. Well, it's legal, and somebody put a lot of work and creativity into creating that system. Is it honest? I don't think so.
Right.
And I don't think it's good for this country, and I think it ought to be outlawed. And you know, I think that there's a number of places where more regulation needs to be put into place, but at the same time, you know, I understand where, you know, we're concerned about over-regulation, overburdening companies and growth and individual liberties, and I respect a great deal guys like you who are trying to raise awareness on these issues and educating people so that they can make decisions. There's a lot of things that you and I would disagree on, but there's also a lot of things that you and I would agree on, and I would fight, you know, alongside to prevent us going into unnecessary elective wars, and for you know, just frivolous, unconstitutional, you know, searches of our phone records and the national security agencies. And you know, if we could just get past partisan politics, I think there's a lot of common sense stuff we could all agree on.
Absolutely, and people need to start working together, get past parties, and start trying to find common ground.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I told you the hour would go by fast. We're done. We're out of time.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, well, hey, look, it was great to have you here, and I appreciate it. I feel like we just scratched the surface, so I will ask you to come back, and we will schedule more time for you, and hopefully your radio debut was all right.
It was. It was a lot better than I thought it would be as far as the nerves go and stuff. So
yeah,
I do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you being here. All right, Mark Levin is coming up after Fox Network News for Elisha Dorfsmith. I'm Joe Harting. This is 105.1 The Big Talker. More stimulating talk.
From the Honda Studios, we are 105.1 The Big Talker.